Welcome to First Unitarian Society of Minneapolis, the birthplace of congregational humanism. We carry on that tradition of free thought today, dedicated to promoting a free search for truth, meaning, and justice. Our web address is firstunitarian.org. I'm David Breeden, Senior Minister. Welcome.
Good morning, and welcome everyone to our weekly assembly for Sunday, October 10th, 2021. We welcome you here to this online space. Whether it's one of your first visits or you've been with us many times, we are glad that you are here as a part of our gathered community. If you're new to the FUS community and would like to find out more about our congregation and our pathway to membership, we welcome you to join our online Welcome to FUS session at noon today. I'll be hosting that at noon today, and that link will appear in a little while in the chat. Even though Assembly is an online event, we are adding in-person outdoor opportunities to get together this month, such as hiking and walking outings, a chili cook-off. I'm especially excited about the chili cook-off, and pumpkin carving. See the Friday email for details. After Assembly today, we invite you to join our Zoom coffee hour. It's a nice time to check in and see each other's faces. And today, Rev Jim will be there if you want to talk about today's talk. The link for coffee hour will be in the chat. Our theme this month is cultivating relationships. These are the words of Mariah Mitchell, Unitarian and the first American woman astronomer. She says, "Small as is our whole system compared with the infinitude of creation, brief as is our life compared with the cycles of time, we are so tethered to all by the beautiful dependencies of law that not only the sparrow's fall is felt to the uttermost bound, but the vibrations set in motion by the words that we utter reach through all space, and the tremor is felt through all time. Come, let us gather in community."
We light the chalice today, remembering our first principle, the inherent worth and dignity of every person. Thank you. And now for our congregational covenant. Love is the spirit of this place, and service its law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another.
Good morning. I'm Allison Wyeth, Director of Religious Education for First Unitarian Society of Minneapolis, and I'm very happy to be here with you this morning. It's been a while, hasn't it? This morning, I'm bringing us our Time for All Ages story. And so I'd like to give our young ones a minute to gather around and get comfortable so we can hear the story together. Our story today is meant to connect us all to our monthly theme, cultivating relationship. Cultivating is a word we often hear connected to growing and tending things, especially things like food plants that nourish us. So this theme is about what we do to lovingly tend our relationships, our connections with others and ourselves, so that they nourish us. Our story today is about how we lovingly tend one of our most important relationships, the one with ourselves. In the words of the author, this book is about owning who you are. This is a book for everyone who's ever said, if I only had this thing or that thing, then I would be happy. Rock What You Got by Samantha Berger. Once upon a blank piece of paper where anything could happen, an artist picked up a pencil and started to draw. She drew a face and a body and 2 feet. Then she gave her drawing a name, Viva. The artist sighed deeply. Something wasn't quite right. So she decided to erase her drawing and start again. But before she could, Viva grabbed the pencil and tried to stop her. Excuse me, lady, artist, ma'am, but I like me the way I am. Before you change one line or dot, can I try to rock what I got? The artist thought, but decided not. What exactly didn't she like? Aha, it was the hair. Maybe if the hair was different, this drawing could work. So she turned the page and tried changing the hair. But after all the trying, it was still Viva on the page, and she had more to say. Rock what you got and rock it a lot. Look at what is, not what is not. Find what is yours and carve out your spot. Take it and own it and rock it a lot. The artist thought, but decided not. What exactly didn't she like? It was the body. Maybe if the body was different, this drawing could work. So she turned the page and tried changing the body. But after all that trying, it was still Viva on the page, and she still had something to say. Everyone has their own special thing. Find what is yours and bring what you bring. Find your own voice and sing how you sing. Find your own oomph, find your own zing. Be your best you and rock what you got. Don't let anyone say what you're not. Live in this world and make your own spot. Take what you've got and rock it a lot. The artist thought, but decided not. What exactly didn't she like? Aha, it was the background. Maybe if the background was different, this drawing could work. So she turned the page and tried changing the entire background. She drew an enchanted forest with a dazzling palace in full color. But after all that, it was still Viva on the page, and she was still saying that same familiar thing. Rock what you got and rock it a lot. Don't let anyone say what you're not. Find what is yours and carve out your spot. Take it and love it and rock it a lot. Is there a chance you forgot? The artist thought. Was there a chance she forgot? There was, because she was the one who had written it a long time ago when she was just about Viva's age. The artist made herself a promise never to forget again. And she decided Viva was perfect just the way she was, rocking exactly what she had. Then together, they turned the page where anything can happen. I really hope you remember what Viva shared with you today whenever you're feeling a little less than confident about how you fit in this world, or how you look, or the messages you get from others about you. I want that so much that I wrote one more thing that I think Viva might have said if she'd ever been to FUS. Remember that everyone here loves you a lot. Talk with us, sing with us. There's always a spot. Rock what you got and rock it a lot.
send a flood, gonna drown him out. This is brave, this is bruised, this is who I'm meant to be. This is me.
Good morning. I'm Mark Johnson, one of the board members of the FUS Foundation. The Foundation manages a number of funds that support the Society, one of which is the Kurt Pearson Memorial Social Concerns Fund. This fund was established in 1992 in loving memory of Kurt by his parents. For nearly 30 years now, this legacy gift has been making contributions to many worthy nonprofit groups that have demonstrated a commitment to social causes that Kurt would have found commendable. The application window is open for the Kurt Pearson Social Concerns Annual Grant. This legacy gift has been making grants to 501c3 nonprofit organizations in the community. Applications can be made by following the link in David's weekly email or going to the FUS website under Member Resources Foundation, where you'll find the application form. Please let the 501c3 organizations know that you have a personal connection to this funding opportunity when they apply. Applications are due by November 15th, and the grant recipients will be announced on December 12th. For more questions, please contact us at foundation@firstunitarian.org. The Foundation is both proud and incredibly humbled by the ability of the Pearson Social Concerns Fund to make such a difference over the years. Grants now total over $50,000 in that time. I ask you to recognize the enormous contribution of the Pearson family and of the organizations the fund has supported. Thank you.
We've been doing our Ask, our offering, recorded recently. Some of our parts of our assembly are just easier that way. But I do want to remind you, because I'm live today, that we do need your support. You know, it was a very odd thing we experienced this summer. We kind of thought for about, 6 minutes that it was all over. And then it was a little depressing to come back and have to close down our assembly again. So yeah, I know everyone's a little bit off and a little bit upset and sad about that. But we're going on. We continue. We've got people in our building every day, and the staff continues to work. So please consider giving to First Unitarian Society. We make it as easy as we can. Just go to firstunitarian.org. You will find on the webpage a little link called Give. All you have to do is hit that, and from there you can go to our FUS Pledge site where you can give your regular pledge, or you can also go to PayPal and the Give Plus app. So lots of ways to give. It should be very easy for you, and we hope you will consider. Thank you so much.
On Sundays, when we gather, we take a few minutes to reflect on the joys, sorrows, and milestones of the human experience. We do this so that we stay in touch with our own humanity. We do this to remind ourselves of the value of a moment of stillness. And we do this so that no one among us is alone, either in celebrating joy or in facing the burdens of life. This morning, we remember and celebrate the life of longtime FUS member Phil Bremer, who died recently at the age of 93. Phil was a member of FUS for more than 50 years, having joined with his wife Helen in 1970. Phil was known as a longtime member of the FUS orchestra, for which he played the violin. Music was an incredibly important part of his life. In his later years, Phil kept in touch with the congregation via members who would visit him and enjoy wonderful, wide-ranging conversations. Sometimes he would even serenade them with his violin. Phil's family announced his death in an obituary in last Sunday's paper, and we'll share the link in the chat. We extend our condolences to Phil's family and his numerous friends. Let's take a moment to lament that oil is now flowing through Line 3 as of August 1st. All of the effort of water protectors and activists, led by indigenous grandmothers, has fallen prey to the machinery of extractive capitalism. Hearts are sore and promises remain broken. And yet, the grandmothers and water protectors tell us the fight is not over. There's still work to do. So let us grieve, and then let us recommit ourselves to the project of honoring the earth and honoring the treaties. We now take a moment of silence for all the challenges and heartbreak going on in our lives and in our world. We pause to say out loud that these are difficult times for all kinds of people, and to remind ourselves to be gentle with ourselves and with others.
Today's reading is a poem by John Rodell. My brain and heart divorced a decade ago over who was to blame about how big of a mess I have become. Eventually, they couldn't be in the same room with each other. Now my head and heart share custody of me. I stay with my brain during the week, and my heart gets me on the weekends. They never speak to one another. Instead, they give me the same note to pass to each other every week. It always says the same thing. This is all your fault. On Sundays, my heart complains about how my head has let me down in the past. And on Wednesday, my head lists all of the times my heart has screwed things up for me in the future. They blame each other for the state of my life. There's been a lot of yelling and crying. So lately, I've been spending a lot of time with my gut, who serves as my unofficial therapist most nights. I sneak out of the window in my ribcage and slide down my spine and collapse on the gut's plush leather chair that's always open for me. And I just sit until the sun comes up. Last evening, my gut asked me if I was having a hard time being caught between my head and my heart. I nodded. I said I didn't know if I could live with either of them anymore. My heart is always sad about something that happened yesterday, while my head is always worried about something that may happen tomorrow, I lamented. My gut squeezed my hand. I just can't live with my mistakes of the past or my anxiety about the future, I sighed. My gut smiled and said, in that case, you should go and stay with your lungs for a while. I was confused. The look on my face gave it away. If you are exhausted about your heart's obsession with the fixed past and your mind's focused on the uncertain future, your lungs are the perfect place for you. There is no yesterday in your lungs. There is no tomorrow there either. There is only now. There is only inhale. There is only exhale. There is only this moment. There is only breath. And in that breath, you can rest while your heart and head work their relationship out. This morning, while my brain was busy reading tea leaves and while my heart was staring at old photographs, I packed a little bag and walked to the door of my lungs. Before I could even knock, she opened the door with a smile, and as a gust of air embraced me, she said, "What took you so long?"
Thank you, Phoebe. That was great. The week before last, I took a few days of study leave to go on a retreat near the shores of Lake Superior. The retreat was led by a minister I know, and by design, I was the only attendee. For 3 days and nights, I stayed in a guest apartment that the minister and her husband have created above their garage. It's a great space for writing and for the solo and guided reflections that were part of my retreat. The apartment is very Northwoods, very Scandinavian, with nice, simple furniture, lots of knotty pine, and views of trees out every window. I found the apartment comfortable and very relaxing, except for one thing. The apartment had a lot of places where I could bump my head. Now, when I'm wearing shoes, the top of my head is about 6 feet 3 inches from the floor. This is generally not a source of concern. My home, and especially my workplace, have very generous ceilings and doors. But even with a high ceiling in the middle, this retreat apartment was a bit of an obstacle course. The ceiling sloped down pretty steeply on one side, meaning that I couldn't fully stand up in front of the fridge or the toilet. The bathroom doorway was on the short side, the kitchen lights came down to my forehead, and I had to weave around the dangling pull chains for the ceiling fans. Even the garden gate outside had a low-hanging piece of decorative ironwork. And unlike some tall people, I do not have a head of hair to serve as an early warning system or a protective cushion. So whenever I was moving around the apartment, I had to look up and pay attention. at least until my brain developed a map and patterns and habits to accommodate my body to this new environment. The ceiling fan chains did get me a couple of times, and there were one or two minor brushes with some of the knotty pine. But overall, I adapted and had a very worthwhile retreat. And one thing I noticed is that I never blamed my body. I never lamented that I was too tall, because there's nothing wrong with me or my height. It's just that not everything is built for someone like me. My approach has always been to be grateful for my height. I've never wished to be shorter, even when my femurs seemed too long for certain airline seats, or when stores stopped carrying pants that I could wear. I am not poorly designed, and neither are you, for that matter. It's just that some things in the world around me weren't designed with me in mind. Our theme this month at the First Unitarian Society of Minneapolis is cultivating relationship. And today I want to talk about a relationship we all have, a relationship with our bodies. Unitarian Universalists and humanists have a reputation for wanting to deal mainly with matters of the mind and brain, diving into philosophy, analyzing history and current events, and strategizing about social justice. And we tend to do these preferred activities without much active participation of our bodies. It's hard to go for a walk and read a theology book at the same time. The Unitarian side of our heritage in particular is sometimes thought of as a religion from the neck up. All brain, no heart, no body. That's why I've called this talk From the Neck Down, to give some consideration to the rest of what makes us human. Whether we pay attention to them or not, our bodies are inevitable, often a blessing and sometimes a burden. And I want to explore that relationship today, because it's a relationship that 100% of us have, and it's often changing and challenging. I want to talk just a bit more about my experience of being a person of above average height. My attitude toward being tall illustrates what I think of as externalized antipathy. Externalized antipathy. Now, not that one wants a lot of antipathy in one's life, but on the occasions that my body has had a hard time fitting into the environment around it, I'm grateful that I've decided that the environment is the problem and not my body. My legs are as long as they are. The airlines that try to cram people of all lengths and widths into the same seats created the problem, not me. And so while I might have moments of feeling physically uncomfortable, I don't feel badly about myself. And it helps that height, for whatever reason, is considered a positive attribute, generally free of the stigma and free of the misplaced moralizing directed at other kinds of bodies. And since tomorrow is National Coming Out Day, I'll say that this kind of externalizing extends to my being gay. Even back when I was a teen struggling with the idea of coming out, even while I was living in fear of what it would mean for my life, I never at core felt that I was bad or had anything to be ashamed of. Like a poorly laid out airplane, it was the world that needed improving. The world has improved since those days, but it still needs fixing to make room for all of us beautiful LGBTQ+ people. We and our bodies and our desires and our identities are not the problem. I've experienced a lot of learning about the body in recent years, and one of the areas of growth for me has been around ableism and disabilities. A number of people living with disabilities hold a perspective that bears some resemblance to what I've been talking about, that the bigger problem is the world. In an online article last year, the writer Andrew Pulrang, who has multiple lifelong disabilities, had this to say about the challenges. Many disabled people find that most of these hardships come from other people and the environment they live in, not their disabilities themselves. It can help to think of a pie chart, Pulrang explains. For each person at different times, there's a different ratio between direct suffering from a disability and indirect hardships imposed by other people's ableism, by systemic failures, and by a lack of accessibility. Some days, chronic back pain or or sudden muscle spasms or loss of mobility is much worse than the physical barriers or interpersonal ableism. Other times, he says, we can cope well with our impairments, but struggle to gain access to the places we need to go, and struggle to process emotionally the onslaughts of insensitive, ableist comments that can come seemingly out of nowhere. He continues, there is absolutely a lot that disabled people endure and have to work through, but much of it is entirely unnecessary pressure from the outside. Disability hardships are real, but they don't have to be. Paul Rang also makes clear that layers of privilege can lead to vastly different outcomes in life situations for any two people with seemingly comparable disabilities. More disabled people, he says, could be independent and happy if their material and social conditions were improved. Paul Rang is one of several writers who have helped me examine my own views of disabilities. He talks about what he calls, quote, the mistaken and corrosive notion that disability is fundamentally a natural tragedy to be overcome. It is not, he says. I have to acknowledge to having my mind expanded by this perspective, the idea of framing a disability as a neutral or even positive difference, like having long legs. Framing it as a neutral or even positive difference rather than a problem in need of fixing. I've also learned a few things from the phrase temporarily able-bodied, which is used to describe people who are not considered to be living with disabilities. Saying temporarily able-bodied is a good reminder of the tentative nature of everything, and of the reality that all of our bodies have limits. As disability advocate and business owner Sean Crump puts it, the question is, when will the barriers in our community impact your life? When? Such a question might be helpful for closing any perceived distance between those with disabilities and those without. Another way that the temporarily able-bodied can help close that distance is to think twice before describing a person with disabilities as an inspiration. I've heard this from a number of friends and writers with disabilities. And there's a Netflix series called Special, which was written by and stars Ryan O'Connell, a young gay man with cerebral palsy. It's a very funny and, I'll let you know, a very sex-positive show, and it also takes on serious issues. There's a gut punch scene in which a very fit, temporarily able-bodied man tells Ryan how inspiring Ryan is, just for going to the gym. Just as Paul Rang described, it's an insensitive ableist remark seeming to come out of nowhere. Ryan feels reduced to his disability and seen only for his disability. This kind of thing is often called inspiration porn. It's an opportunity for the able-bodied to feel like they've done a good deed by effectively patting a disabled person on the head. They simultaneously distance themselves from any bodily differences by othering the disabled person. There is a human tendency to back away from anything perceived as an illness or infirmity of the body, and a tendency to create hierarchies of humanity to feel better about one's own fate. Being disabled is one of the billion possible ways of being human, my friend the Reverend Teresa Soto says. She describes her own disabilities as factory installed. She's always had them, and they're a part of who she is. She's fully human, and in the words of the story we heard earlier, she rocks what she's got, and she rocks it a lot. And, Reverend Teresa says, she imagines supportive, inclusive futures for everyone. It is possible, she writes, for us together to keep shifting frameworks that devalue other people's human experiences, so that if someone should become disabled, the future that awaits them doesn't require them to struggle or do everything in the hardest possible way. Now, I realize that by titling this talk From the Neck Down, I may be seen as reinforcing the famous Cartesian perspective of mind-body dualism. The idea that the mind and body are separate and very different in nature. But please know that I do not consider there to be a bright line between the body and the mind. It's actually a little surprising to me that this duality has persisted so strongly to the present day, considering the progress of scientific knowledge. Right now, I'm reading a book called The Body Keeps the Score, which was recommended to me by our young adult group here at FUS. The book's author, Dr. Bessel van der Kolk, tells of how 140 years ago, our friend Charles Darwin wrote a book about human and animal emotions and their similarities. Darwin described the actions and reactions between the mind and the viscera, which he called the two most important organs in the body. He sort of considered the middle of the body as one organ. And he talked about the nerves that wire everything together. Dr. van der Kolk praises Darwin's forward-thinking and all-encompassing approach. And he points out that emotions have the power to cause physical pain in the body. Stomach aches, headaches, muscle tension, we're all aware of these things. And he reminds us that physical pain in turn affects our emotions. Until recently, van der Kolk writes, this bidirectional communication between body and mind was largely ignored by Western science, even as it had long been central to traditional healing practices in many parts of the world, notably India and China. One might note that the white and Christian world, with its view of the body as sinful and the soul as a separate entity, helped perpetuate this dualism. But there is now a broadening understanding that so much of how we react to life and how we feel our humanity happens outside of our minds. That it has taken so long is a reminder of our denial of the body's importance and of our negative views of the body. The problem of ableism is rooted in our own fears about our own bodies. The attention we pay to ourselves from the neck down also has taken on another meaning in the pandemic era. With so much of life, school, and white-collar employment now taking place online, many of our bodies are getting ignored in two ways. One, a typical Zoom meeting is truly a bunch of people as seen from the neck up. It's a gallery of heads and faces in boxes, with the rest of the body deemed extraneous. The body is unnecessary, except as a support structure for your head, and maybe as a way to press the unmute button if your brain remembers. Many of us have spent much of our days during the pandemic appearing disembodied. And that has led to a second kind of ignoring the body. In the online world, there is almost no requirement to move your body. Office workers used to go from desk to meeting room to cafeteria and back. Social justice advocates used to run all over town to get to different meetings for different causes and different communities. Now, except for taking care of a few bodily necessities, a person can spend 8 hours or 16 hours in the same chair at the same screen with tired eyes and muscles that have fallen asleep for lack of purpose. Anyone predisposed to ignore one's body may forget about it entirely until numbness sets in. And as van der Kolk reminds us in The Body Keeps the Score, human bodies are designed not only to move frequently, but also to be in the physical presence of other human bodies. We're wired that way from birth. It's one of the factory presets. So for many people, the virtual experience has been only partly fulfilling. Information and words and feelings may be shared, and for some people that occurs more easily online than in person. And there is a lot of value in that kind of connection. I've learned this from leading grief groups and writing sessions and coffee hours online. And actually, much of my seminary education took place remotely. But my seminary still made everyone come to Chicago several times a year, because there is still power in a physical room full of people. At the same time, gathering electronically and being disembodied can offer the benefit of removing a number of barriers to participation. I chose my seminary in part because I didn't have to move to another city. And folks who want to see what we're up to here at FUS on a Sunday morning don't have to overcome mobility challenges or snowy sidewalks. They don't even have to be available on Sunday morning or live nearby. They can still enjoy some levels of participation. Thanks to our incredibly dedicated tech team, this was actually an option before the pandemic. and it's become an even more important and permanent part of how we do things. And for those who want embodied in-person experiences with their fellow members of the congregation, we're offering new kinds of outdoor social activities for now, like a chili cook-off and nature outings. And we're offering opportunities to take part in justice events like last weekend's Bands Off Our Bodies March. That march was itself a protest of the way certain politicians are hijacking individuals' relationships with their own bodies. So politically, medically, interpersonally, intrapersonally, bodies can be so complicated. Maybe that's part of what's behind the dualism and the minimization. Bodies are a lot to deal with. Best to put them somewhere else. But we don't really have that choice. Having a body is, at least for now, the only way to go through this experience we call life. Fortunately, as Reverend Teresa said, there are a billion possible ways of being human. May each of us find the way that fits best, and may all of us work toward a world of greater inclusion for the bodies of all, so that all may fit in anywhere they choose. May it be so.
Our extinguishing the chalice words. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts and in our minds until we are together again.
Have you ever felt like nobody was there? Have you ever felt forgotten in the middle of nowhere? Have you ever felt like you could disappear? Like you could fall, no one would hear? Let that lonely feeling wash away. Maybe there's a reason to believe you'll be okay. 'Cause when you don't feel strong enough to stand, you can reach out your hand. And oh, someone will come running, and I know comes crashing through, when you need a friend to carry you, and when you're broken on the ground, you will be found. So let the sun come streaming in, 'cause you'll reach up and you'll rise again. If you only look around, you will be found. Streaming in, 'cause you reach up and you rise again. If you
These closing words are from Sonia Renee Taylor in her book, The Body is Not an Apology. Making peace with your body is your mighty act of revolution. It is your contribution to a changed planet where we might all live unapologetically in the bodies we have. May it be so, and blessed be.